The stars burned cold and distant as Admiral Helena Vance stood on the bridge of the ISS Retribution. Her eyes scanned the holographic display before her with practiced intensity. 300 enemy warships had gathered at the edge of the Kessler system. The Zorth Collective had finally made their move after months of careful preparation. For 6 long years, humanity had fought against the Collective. The alien empire had conquered 17 star systems before they reached human space. They had expected easy victory. They had expected humanity to fall like every other species before them. They believed humans were soft creatures from a gentle world who would surrender at the first sign of overwhelming force. They were completely and utterly wrong. Commander Marcus Reed approached the Admiral with a data tablet in his hands. His face showed concern, but also the kind of determination that came from years of brutal warfare. The numbers were not in their favor. The Imperial fleet had only 87 vessels against 300 enemy ships. Any normal commander would have considered retreat or negotiation. Helena Vance was not a normal commander. She had earned her position through blood and sacrifice. Admiral, the Zorth fleet has begun their approach. They will reach weapons range in 43 minutes, Marcus reported in a steady voice. Helena nodded slowly. She had prepared for this moment her entire career. The Zorth believed that superior numbers meant automatic victory. They had conquered weaker species using overwhelming force and never bothered to develop complex strategies. Their approach never changed because it never needed to change. Until humanity stood in their path. Signal all ships. Formation Delta 7. Prepare the Hammer Protocol. Helena ordered without hesitation. Marcus paused for a moment. The Hammer Protocol had never been used in actual combat. It was considered too dangerous and too unpredictable. The training simulations had shown both incredible success and catastrophic failure depending on execution. But desperate times required desperate measures. They had no other choice. Across the fleet, captains received their orders through encrypted channels. Ships began to move into position with mechanical precision that reflected years of drilling. Human vessels were smaller than Zorth warships, but they were faster and more maneuverable. Every captain understood what was at stake. Earth itself lay just 3 systems away. If they failed here, humanity would face complete extinction. Their families, their children, everything they loved would be destroyed. On the Zorth flagship, Supreme Commander Thrakos watched the human fleet with obvious amusement. His species had evolved as apex predators on their harsh home world. They stood 8 feet tall with naturally armored skin and 4 powerful arms capable of crushing metal. Humans appeared weak and fragile in comparison. Thrakos had studied reports of human military capability for weeks before this invasion. He found nothing impressive in their tactics or technology. The humans are not retreating, his tactical officer observed with genuine surprise in his voice. Thrakos made a deep rumbling sound that passed for laughter among his kind. They are foolish creatures who lack the intelligence to recognize certain defeat. They do not understand that resistance is completely pointless. We outnumber them nearly 4 to 1. This battle will be over quickly, and then we will feast on their home world. The Zorth fleet continued its approach in a standard assault formation. They had used this same formation against 12 different intelligent species throughout their expansion. It had never failed even once. Their ships formed a massive wall of metal and weapons, designed to crush any opposition through sheer concentrated firepower. The formation was simple, because simple had always worked. Helena watched the enemy approach on her display with calculating eyes. She noticed their predictable formation and allowed herself a slight smile. The Zorth had grown comfortable with easy victories against species who fought conventionally. They had forgotten what it meant to face an enemy that refused to surrender regardless of the odds. All ships report ready for Hammer Protocol, Admiral, Marcus announced after checking his communications panel. On my mark, Helena said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. The distance between the fleets closed rapidly with each passing second. Zorath weapons had significantly longer range than human weapons. This was another reason for their unshakable confidence. They expected to destroy human ships before humans could even return fire effectively. At 30,000 kilometers, the Zorath fleet opened fire simultaneously. Thousands of energy beams and missiles launched toward the human formation in a devastating display. It was an overwhelming demonstration of firepower that would have destroyed any conventional fleet instantly. But the human ships were no longer where the Zorath sensors expected them to be. "Execute now," Helena commanded firmly. Every human ship engaged their emergency drives simultaneously in perfect coordination. The fleet scattered in a perfectly choreographed pattern that had been practiced thousands of times in simulations and drills. Ships moved at angles that seemed physically impossible, using gravity wells and momentum in ways the Zorath had never witnessed or even imagined possible. The massive Zorath barrage hit empty space and nothing else. Their weapons had been aimed at positions the human ships had already abandoned. Before the aliens could readjust their targeting systems, the human fleet had reformed behind and around their formation in a deadly embrace. Draco stared at his tactical display in complete confusion. The human ships had moved faster than his sensors could properly track. They had split into small coordinated groups that now surrounded his fleet from multiple directions. This was not how inferior species were supposed to fight against their betters. "How is this possible?" he demanded of his officers. His staff had no satisfactory answer. The Zorath had never developed complex tactical maneuvers because they had never needed such things. Their strategy was always straightforward: overwhelm enemies with numbers and firepower. Against species that used similar conventional strategies, this approach always brought victory. Humans did not fight like other species. They fought like something else entirely. Alana's voice came through the communication system, transmitted to the entire Zorath fleet on all frequencies. "You came to our space uninvited. You threatened our worlds and our families. You believed we would break under pressure. You miscalculated badly. The human ships opened fire from all directions simultaneously. They targeted specific weak points on Zorath vessels that human intelligence had identified over years of careful conflict analysis. Engine systems, shield generators, ammunition storage, communication arrays. Every shot was precise and devastatingly deadly. The first wave of attack destroyed 47 Zorath ships in less than 2 minutes. The explosions created chaos throughout the alien formation. Ships tried desperately to turn and face their attackers, but the humans had already moved to new positions. This was the Hammer Protocol in action. Never stay still. Never fight fair. Never give the enemy time to think. Strike hard. Move fast. Strike again. Human ships worked in small, coordinated groups of 3 and 4 vessels, supporting each other while targeting isolated enemy vessels. The larger Zorath ships could not track targets that moved so quickly and unpredictably. Thrakos finally understood his terrible mistake. He had believed that humans were weak because they were physically small. He had thought their technology was inferior because their ships were not as large or heavily armed. He had never considered that humans might fight differently than anyone he had faced before. "All ships, defensive formation immediately," he ordered with growing desperation in his voice. But his fleet was already in complete chaos. Human attacks came from every direction simultaneously. Captains could not coordinate because the communication channels were jammed with distress signals and conflicting orders. The mighty Zorath armada was being torn apart systematically by a force 1/3 its size. On the Retribution, Alana directed the battle with cold efficiency. Each destroyed enemy ship brought them closer to victory, but she knew they could not maintain this intensity forever. Human ships were taking damage now. Some had already been destroyed. Every loss hurt her deeply. "Admiral, the enemy flagship is vulnerable. Their shields are down to 30% and falling. Marcus reported with excitement in his voice. Helena saw the opportunity clearly. Taking out the enemy commander would break Zorath morale completely. Their species followed strength and dominance above all else. Without Threkos to lead them, the remaining ships would likely retreat in confusion. All hammer groups converge on the flagship. Maximum firepower on my command, she ordered. 23 human ships turned toward the massive Zorath command vessel. They attacked from multiple angles simultaneously, their weapons focused on the same weakened shield sections. The combined assault was absolutely overwhelming. Threkos watched in horror as his ship's defenses failed completely. Human missiles struck his vessel's hull repeatedly. Explosions rocked the command deck violently. Crew members fell as systems overloaded and failed throughout the ship. "This cannot be happening," he whispered in disbelief. But it was happening. The humans had done what no other species had ever accomplished. They had brought the mighty Zorath collective to its knees through superior tactics and unbreakable determination. The final missile struck the flagship's reactor core directly. The explosion was visible across the entire battlefield. The Supreme Commander and his vessel ceased to exist in a brilliant flash of light that burned brighter than any star. Across the Zorath fleet, panic spread instantly like wildfire. Their invincible leader was gone. Their superior numbers had failed completely. Humans had proven themselves the superior warriors through skill and courage. Ships began to retreat chaotically. Those that could still move turned and fled toward deep space without coordination. The humans pursued relentlessly, destroying several more vessels before the survivors escaped into faster-than-light travel. When the battle finally ended, 197 Zorath ships had been destroyed. Another 42 were captured intact. Only 61 managed to escape. The human fleet had lost 23 vessels, with 12 more badly damaged. Helena stood on her bridge and looked at the debris field that had once been an invasion fleet. She felt exhaustion mixed with grim satisfaction. Her crew had fought brilliantly. Every sacrifice had meaning and purpose. Signal all ships. "The enemy has been defeated. Well done, everyone," she announced. Across the fleet, cheers erupted on every vessel. Crew members embraced each other with tears of relief. They had faced extinction and survived, more than survived. They had delivered a message that would echo across the galaxy forever. News of the battle spread quickly through known space. Other species watched in amazement as reports confirmed the details. The mighty Zorath collective had been defeated decisively by a species they had dismissed as weak. Humanity had proven that size and numbers did not determine victory. Within weeks, the Zorath collective requested peace negotiations. Their military leadership was in complete chaos. Other conquered species began to rebel openly, inspired by human victory. The empire that had seemed unstoppable was crumbling from within. Helena led the human delegation to the peace conference personally. She sat across from new Zorath leaders who looked at her with a mixture of fear and genuine respect. They agreed to return all conquered territory and pay significant reparations for their unprovoked aggression. When the treaty was signed, humanity's position in the galaxy changed forever. Other species sought alliances with Earth eagerly. Trade agreements flooded in from across known space. Humans were no longer seen as prey or easy targets. They were seen as protectors and potential allies. Admiral Vance returned to Earth as a hero. Millions gathered to celebrate the fleet's victory. Children looked up at the sky with new dreams of exploring the stars. Parents told them stories of how humanity had stood against impossible odds and won through courage and cleverness. In the quiet of her quarters, Helena remembered the 23 ships and their crews who had not returned home. She kept their names in a personal file that she read every night before sleep. Victory always came at a cost that should never be forgotten. But their sacrifice had not been in vain. Humanity was safe. The stars belonged to those brave enough to claim them. and the galaxy had learned an important lesson about underestimating the children of Earth. The Zorath had calculated human strength based on physical appearance and ship size alone. They had used simple mathematics that counted vessels and measured raw firepower. They had made assumptions based on their experience with other conquered species. They had miscalculated everything that actually mattered. Humans did not fight with bodies or machines alone. They fought with innovation, creativity, adaptation, and an absolute refusal to accept defeat under any circumstances. They adapted to every challenge presented. They found solutions to every problem encountered. They turned apparent weaknesses into devastating advantages. The Imperial fleet had corrected the Zora's miscalculation permanently, not with speeches or diplomatic negotiations, with fire and determination and the unbreakable courage of warriors who would rather die than see their home destroyed. In the years that followed, no other species made the same mistake twice. When they saw human ships approaching, they remembered what happened at Kessler System. They remembered that humans were not the prey they appeared to be. They were predators wearing the skin of prey, and the galaxy was finally learning to respect them properly.